Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. We're finally here. The eve of the Overwatch League's return for the 2020 season. It kicks off tomorrow, February 8th, and we are going to love it, I hope. And with the Overwatch League season finally coming back, so are my picks and my predictions and all that kind of stuff. So, before we get into what my actual picks are, I want to talk about how the format for these videos are going to be changing from last season. They're mostly going to be the same, but a couple things will change. Last season, I talked about every team, every single video, and I talked about both the previous week's matches and the matches for the next week. With the way that the Overwatch League's schedule has changed, that is not going to be the case anymore. This season, you're going to get two videos, one on Friday and one on Monday. Friday, such as today's video, is going to be my picks, my predictions, what I think is going to happen based on the schedule for the weekend to come. And then come Monday, you're going to get a video talking about what did happen, going through what my record was, going through what my all that kind of stuff, and who I was impressed by, who I was disappointed by, my biggest takeaways, and that is that. So this way I can go a little more in depth on both of those topics as opposed to last season where I was very much like cutting it short. I only talked a little bit about each team each week. I tried to not talk so heavily about every little detail. But now we have more ability to do that because of the way the new schedule works. Also, there's usually fewer matches per week. I think there's actually always fewer matches per week. The first week, there's only 8 matches across the 2 days, across the 2 homestands. So that is something to note. The other thing that is changing is the big pick system. Now, last season, I did big picks, 1 big pick per day of matches. For this season, that is going to change. It's roughly going to stay the same. There's still going to be 2 big picks, which is 2 days of matches, so it makes sense. But instead of it being per day, it's per homestand. So they could end up being on the same day, depending on the homestands, but I'm going to pick the best game, the closest game that I see per homestand, and I'm going to pick that as my big pick. So that's going to be 2 big picks per week, 1 per homestand, just so that way I'm not, last season there were so many times where I felt like I was picking games that really weren't that good to be big pick games because there just wasn't enough good games. Now I feel like, yes, there's fewer games, but there's always going to be at least one that's got to be good at the homestand between 2 really close teams, and that's how I'm picking these for this season. Other than that, the format is going to remain mostly the same. Maybe a couple changes here and there, but that is how it is going to be for the most part going forward. So with all that out of the way, with the format changes and all that kind of stuff out of the way, let's get into my picks themselves, and you can see them right now on your screen. So we're going to start the New York homestand, as that is technically the homestand that starts first. That is where the season kicks off. First match of the season will be the Toronto Defiant taking on the Paris Eternal, and I am picking the Toronto Defiant. And I know a lot of people are very weird about the Toronto Defiant. A lot of people are not very high on this team. Where I put them in my power rankings is a lot higher than I think a lot of other people are going to have them. I really like what the Toronto Defiant have done this offseason. I think they've improved a lot. I think they have a lot of really good players. Yes, I definitely think that they have there's a really good chance they fall flat because they just don't have that ability to improve in a lot of ways. I feel like we know who they are. They're a lot of veteran players. They don't really have that ceiling that a lot of other teams do. We know what we're getting out of them. I think they're going to be relatively consistent, and I think that's really a big thing for this team. The Paris Eternal have a lot of really good players, a lot of really good new players. The problem is, a lot of them can't play yet. So I like the Toronto Defiance veteran roster right now against the largely European Paris Eternal roster that they can field right now. They can't field Hanbin or Sparkle yet. So until those two are able to play, I really think Paris Eternal are really going to have to find their rhythm. And I just feel more confident in the Defiant, at least for this point in the season. First week 1, I feel more confident in the Defiant than I do the Eternal. Moving on to the second game for Saturday, we have the London Spitfire taking on the New York Excelsior. This is a game that I have to go give it to the New York Excelsior. They're playing in New York in front of their home crowd. They have arguably a top 3 roster in the league. Some people would disagree, but a lot of people have them in that top 5 at least. So they have a top 5 roster in the league according to almost everybody. And you have a London team whose roster is a relatively unknown roster, pretty weak. I don't feel super great about what London has right now. It's a lot of new players. Obviously, they could really surprise us. They could be a much better roster than what we're expecting them to be. But right now, I feel like we haven't gotten enough to feel that confident yet in the ability of the London Spitfire to beat a team like the NYXL, who are very, very good, who have been the juggernaut in the Atlantic for 2 seasons now. And I think that we're going to have to see a lot of impressive things out of London if they want to beat New York in New York, where New York has been waiting to play for 2 years now. I really think this is going to be a big game for New York. I don't think London is going to be able to really pull this one off. Moving on to Sunday, we have the London Spitfire taking on the Paris Eternal. That is my big pick game for the New York homestand. And the reason why it's my big pick game is, one, the European rivalry is huge between London and Paris, just as cities, and the British and the French. But I also think these two teams are in a pretty interesting spot, and I think it's the closest game that there is here. The other one I was considering was the Defiant versus the Eternal, but I just think this one, it's 2 European teams, and it's 2 cities who just historically have this this beef, this feud. So I thought this one would be better for that reason. This is a game that's really interesting. Obviously, I just explained my thoughts on the Spitfire and the Eternal. I think the Spitfire right now have the advantage because they have their roster at full strength. They have every player that they will be able to use, and I think that gives them a better roster just looking at it, right? When the Eternal have Sparkle and Hanbin, I think this could be a much closer match, and I think there's a much better chance that match goes in the favor of the Paris Eternal. Because I put the Paris Eternal higher in my power rankings, and I think the Paris Eternal are a team that has a very high ceiling. But the London Spitfire, I think, are closer to that ceiling right now than the Paris Eternal are, because the London Spitfire are at full strength. I like them better in that for that reason. I'm going to pick them over the Eternal. I could see this one going either way. That's why it's my big pick game. But ultimately, I think the Spitfire are the team that will win this game, because I think ultimately they are the better team. And I think we can expect more out of them than we can the Eternal at this stage of the season. The final match for the New York homestand is the Boston Uprising taking on the New York Excelsior. Once again, I'm picking the New York Excelsior. This one, to me, is an even easier pick than the London Spitfire match. The Boston, to me, is the weakest team in the league in terms of roster. I look at that roster and it doesn't really impress me that much. It's okay. It's got a lot of pieces that they're trying to pull together. I will need to see more out of them than what we have seen already. And that is a big part of why I just can't pick them. I think that they're a team who last season wasn't that great. They obviously have a lot of new pieces this season, but not enough pieces to make me say, oh, they're just significantly better than what they were last season. I don't feel that way about this team. I feel very questionable about this team. I don't think this is a team that is super well managed, I guess. I don't know how they're going to be coaching wise. I don't know how they're going to be in terms of their play. I think they're a very interesting team. They're a very weird team because they're a very mixed team. You know, they have a player from the Netherlands, obviously a Fusions at main tank who's from the UK. They have a New Zealander in DPS. They have some Korean players on the roster. They have an American player on the roster. They have a whole bunch of different players on the roster. It's a very mixed roster. I don't know how it's going to work. Their roster, to me, on paper, is the weakest roster in the league. So I don't want to pick them on the road in New York, where the NYXL are playing in front of their home crowd for the second time in this case. And I think it's going to be a game that goes the NYXL's way. So that's it for the New York homestand. My big pick, of course, my pick of London over the Paris Eternal. Now we can move on to the Dallas homestand, where we start off with my big pick game, which is the LA Gladiators taking on the Vancouver Titans. I've made my thoughts very clear in my power rankings and in my videos on the Gladiators that I'm not super high on the Gladiators this season. I don't love what they've done in their DPS lineup. I think that they have a pretty good tank line. Not the best tank line, but a pretty good tank line. I think OG is a good improvement over Roar. I think Space is an improvement maybe over Void, but if it is an improvement, it's not much of an improvement. I think Void is a very good player. But the Gladiators' DPS lineup is so weak, in my opinion, that it really holds this team back. And I think they're going to struggle a lot if the damage dealers are important, which right now I believe they are. The Vancouver Titans, on the other hand, I still like what they've done. Obviously, they got rid of Bumper and they got rid of Tizzy, and that's a big sticking point for a lot of people. But I think overall, their roster is better than what the Gladiators have. I think the Titans really only have one change to their roster, which is that they're going to have Bumper in at main tank, who's a better player. Now, that's a very important position, a very important role, and it's going to require some changes in the ways that they play. But overall, that is where I think this match will go. I think it's going to go the way of the Titans. I think they're just a better roster. They have more talent, and I feel like it's going to go their direction because they are the better team and they're more impressive right now, based on purely paper matchup than what the Gladiators are. So I'm picking the Titans. Moving on to the next game on Saturday, it is the LA Valiant taking on the Dallas Fuel. Now, this one is also a game that I consider making my big pick game because the more I look at the Valiant's roster and the more I hear about them, there's people saying that they're actually playing very, very well. They're actually a better team than what people were kind of saying they were. I was very, very tempted to make this a big pick game, but I'm still a little hesitant to because I do think the Valiant are better than what a lot of people have been giving them credit for. I put them down really low in my power rankings. I almost didn't. But it's very hard to rank that kind of bottom group of teams. And I just didn't. I found it very difficult to put them above some of the other teams that were down there. I definitely could see the Valiant winning this game. If this game wasn't in Dallas, if this was on an equal playing field, and they were playing in San Francisco, or they were playing in Vancouver, or they were playing, in Chengdu, whatever. If they weren't playing in Dallas, I would give the Valiant a better chance. Because they're playing in Dallas, I think the Dallas Fuel really will have a lot of motivation. We saw how well they played at the Dallas homestand last year. Now they're going back to another Dallas homestand. I really do think the Dallas Fuel are going to be the better team in this match. They're going to benefit from that greatly. We've seen them make some roster moves to make their team better. There's definitely still some stuff that could change. But overall, I think where the Fuel are is better than where the Valiant are right now. And the Fuel have the advantage of playing at home, so I'm picking the Fuel for this one. Moving on to Sunday, I'm picking the Titans over the Valiant for a lot of the same reasons. The Valiant are still a team that need to see in action and see how well they perform before I'm ready to give them big upset wins over a team like Vancouver, because I don't know much about the Valiant yet. I haven't seen them perform at a super high level yet. Because the season hasn't started yet, and there's a lot of questions around the roster, so I don't feel comfortable and confident enough right now picking the Valiant in a big upset, in what I perceive as a big upset over Vancouver. The final match of the homestand is the San Francisco Shock taking on the Dallas Fuel. The defending champs start their season up against a team that is at home. And I don't think this one's going to be close. I think the San Francisco Shock are the favorites still to win the 2020 season. I think they're that good. I don't see this match going the direction of the Dallas Fuel at home. I think the Shock are that good. You can see, of course, the Shock and the Valiant got those new colors this season. Hey. But anyway, I really like what the Shock have done. They didn't really change a lot this season. I think they're going to be a very good team once again, and I think that they're going to beat the Dallas Fuel pretty easily, just because I think they're really on opposite ends. I think the Shock are the best team in the league. I think the Valiant or the Fuel are in the bottom half. So that's really where I am with that. Those are though all of my picks. I'm really excited for this weekend. I'm definitely gonna catch as much of the games on Sunday as I can. Saturday I'm a little busy, unfortunately, so I'll catch whatever I can, and I'll update you guys on what I can, and I'll make sure to watch highlights and follow what's going on as best I can. But that is everything for this week. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. Stay tuned Monday for my look back at these picks, how I did, and what my overall thoughts were on the weekend and the different teams, the different matches, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to get out of here. So let me know down below your thoughts on my picks, your own picks, if you want anything like that. I'd love to hear it. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and hope you have a wonderful weekend watching some of these matches. And I hope that this season is wonderful. So thank you once again, and bye bye.